Russell Broadbent, you wrote on X last night, "I won't stand by when cruel discrimination targets the most vulnerable, especially parents with young children. No jab, no pay deepens financial hardship, prevents access to childcare and limits employment, especially for women. Today I called for conscientious objector rights to be restored." You've had enormous correspondence on this, haven't you?
We sure have. We're well up over 1,000 families now, and they're just the ones that have written to me. Look, this is very unfair, particularly, we talk about closing the gap with Indigenous kids especially. This really offends those particular families those Indigenous kids particularly. It's all kids that where their parents choose not to vaccinate. But also all I'm asking is that they have a right to say, we have a conscientious objection to this, which we used to have. It was taken away from us by a Liberal government, I think by a Liberal government. And, our freedoms are being eroded piece by piece by piece by piece. This affects women particularly, and it offends their right to be able to work because they've got to stay home and look after their children because they can't afford the childcare. But in Brisbane or in Queensland, if you're wealthy, you can send your kids along to preschool anyway. Anyway. So if you're rich, doesn't affect you. It's only the most vulnerable. It's the people who I'm afraid that were vulnerable to government attack. We will force them to do exactly what we tell them to do.
You are such a lone voice in this area, though, Russell.
I saw that in a poem tonight. Someone took a photo of me just standing there delivering a speech on the disinformation bill. I'd say to the two of you, and this is why Daisy is one of my I'm a fan of Daisy's, is because, people that I hear that are prepared to stand up on issues on their own, no matter what the issue is, on behalf of the most vulnerable in our community who don't get it, they don't have a voice of their own. And it's been heartbreaking to some of the emails that have come back to me from these wonderful, wonderful, wonderful mums.
Something separate to this, Daisy, the peak business body has launched a blistering attack today on the federal government's new environment laws, which look set to have a virtual climate trigger thanks to the Greens and the Teals. In other words, you could say that every future project will have a green guarantee. Another cross for the economy to bear.
Well, yes, as if it needs another one. I mean, this is what happens when Labor gets into bed with the Greens, and people sort of don't. They think, oh, it won't happen. Yeah, it will. The things they do. But look, Chris, what struck me is that the chief executive of the Business Council, Brand Black, I mean, he put out his attack and he was rightfully very critical and said it'd be bad for business. But in the same breath, the statement said that the BCA supported the transition to net zero and wanted it all to go again. I thought, well, I'm sorry, you can't really talk out of both sides of your mouth there, because you can give the platitudes if you want to. Yes, we're Business Council, we support net zero. But this is what comes along with the transition to net zero. These are the kinds of policies that are eventually going to come in. So I respect Mr. Black for, standing up for the Business Council and for saying this, but sorry, sir, you really need to sort your priorities. You cannot be barracking for the transition to net zero while also complaining that there might be a green trigger. Yeah,
they're indirectly pushing the very laws that they're complaining about. You're exactly right. Now, the Climate Change Minister, Chris Bowen, used a Dorothy Dixer in Question Time today to poke fun at the opposition's push for nuclear. Here's what the minister said.
On the 23rd of this month, the Leader of the Opposition has a big speech.
Order.
Now, what's the big title of the speech? To inspire the Australian people about his alternative energy plan. A nuclear-powered Australia. Could it work? Question mark. Mr. Speaker. Could it work? I table the Leader of the Opposition's speech. Always happy to help, Mr. Speaker. Now, fair question, well asked, to give credit where it's due. Fair question. But I suggest it might be time for the Leader of the Opposition to stop asking questions and maybe start answering.
Gee, picky. Russell, the more I see Bowen attack nuclear, out of the blue, mind you, the more I sense that he actually fears what this policy could do for the coalition.
Well, it's a green policy for the nation, and it's one that I believe Australia, in the long run, will have nuclear power as part of the mix. Absolutely no doubt about it. I think Dutton is doing the right thing. I think Bowen, actually, you're correct. He's feeling the heat because everywhere he goes, people are saying to him, "Oh, hang on, this mightn't be a bad idea. This mightn't be a bad idea. It doesn't have to be that far away if we get on with it now." Might be a bit tough for him.
Yeah, I think it is, and he's starting to show that it's tough for him. All right, Daisy, now you've got to translate something for me, maybe decode it for me today. I watched Senator Fatima Payman stand on her feet in Parliament, and in her latest speech, she was talking about some of the new voters that would come on board next year and vote for the first time, but I couldn't understand some of the words she used. Have a listen.
To the Sigmas of Australia, I say that this goofy-air government have been capping. Not just now, but for a long time. A few of you may remember when they said there'll be no phantom tax under the government I lead. They're capaholics. They're also yapaholics. Though some of you cannot yet vote, I hope when you do, it will be in a more goated Australia for a government with more aura. Skivity.
Skivity? What is a Sigma? What's a skivity?
Well, look, what Senator Fatima Payman was trying to do is she said she was trying to kind of, she was worried about these new voters that are going to vote. So she wanted to talk to them in language they would understand. So she's basically translated what is, typical speech into what's supposedly Gen Z and Generation Alpha speech. And she wasn't so awful on Israel. I might be inclined to find it amusing. But the thing is, throughout this speech, she used a couple of terms that are actually millennial terms, which is my generation. Like chat, for instance, means kind of lame. And I was using it when I was in high school. Take the L is a generic term that everyone uses, and it means take a loss, basically. So a little bit overzealous. She also used the term gear, which she called the goods and services tax the GIATS and services tax. The problem there, Chris, and I had to look this up, GIAT doesn't mean goods. GIAT, depending on how you spell it, can either be an abbreviation of goddamn, or if you spell it with one T or two T's, it either means someone with a curvaceous body or someone with a large buttocks. So unless you're saying the person with large buttocks and services tax doesn't quite make sense. And if you do say that, well, it doesn't sound entirely wholesome.
You nailed it. You nailed it. Russell, do you feel as old as I feel right now?
People that try tricks like that in the parliament, I suppose people are talking about it, but that's all.